Joining us is the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, AIFD.
Well said.
And the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. What's happening, Dr. Jasser?
Hey, Dennis. I wish I could tell you that, when my phone starts ringing off the hook, it's often good things, but usually it's horror that's happening as a result of a few of my co-religionists around the world. So, but it is good to be back with you, Dennis.
Well, Dr. Jasser, it's gotten so, it is such an Outer Limits episode now. As I saw that man the first day, I thought, what is this? That must be a man who stopped him. Oh, my God, look, he got blood on him, and he confiscated. Honest to God, that's what I was thinking, and my mind would not allow me to take in the horror of a man standing there and calmly on a YouTube video or whatever the hell it is, an iPhone video, talking about the butchery that went on in the background, but it was him. What in the hell? Tell us about the two characters themselves. London-born, but what do we know about them?
Well, we know that they were affiliated with some of these groups that one of them, for example, was following a character by the name of Anjum Chowdhury, who is a known actor in London that whose group talks about taking over the British government and spreading the caliphate. And these guys have been quite open in their how much they hate Western society. But British laws of free speech, and in many ways have allowed them to operate. They've not specifically advocated for terrorism, but they were basically one step away, and this guy took it upon himself. This is what happens when the so-called moderate Muslims or Islamists don't take on these other groups that talk about the caliphate, like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is another large radical group throughout Europe that very few Muslims have taken on. And we simply say, well, they can operate because they don't they don't advocate violence. But when they're advocating the downfall and the overthrow of Western society, when they say that all evil in the world comes from the West, it's no surprise that you're going to start to produce, what we have wrongfully called lone wolves. And, a bunch of lone wolves is a pack, and you have multiple packs going on. And yesterday I was pretty saddened to see President Obama give a speech on counterterrorism and basically used the word ideology, I think, once, didn't mention radical Islam, and actually still, again, gave this sort of nod to moderate Islam, but never talked about the ideology we're fighting. And these groups, these two characters, came out of the same type of mentality that created the Tsarnaev brothers in Boston, in that they blamed America, blamed the West, and hated the countries they lived in. And if you look at polls, Dennis, 81% of British Muslims say that they're Muslim first and British second. So the problem of radicalization is not that final step when they turn into these monsters that want to behead people on the street. The problem is initially when they don't bond to the society they live in, and they're basically enemies within, and they're not patriotic.
Enemies within who are often subsidized by the government they despise. I'm looking at this interview with Omar Bakri. He's a Syrian-born Islamist. He interviewed down in Tripoli, northern Lebanon, where they're all in measured tones, talking about the quiet young man that he saw. I recognized him immediately. What I saw, I was proud, standing firm, courageous, brave, not running away. And I'm just thinking, my God, this is turning into a day at the office. That kid with the cleavers, his heart rate didn't even look elevated. What is it with the West? Are they just unable to, because they can't believe that this sort of ultimate evil exists, to acknowledge it?
They don't, because this includes a component of a faith practice of a quarter of the world's population. We are fearful. We are afraid of our own shadows and letting our own political correctness and multiculturalism, as Cameron finally a year ago said, multiculturalism is our defeat, and we are not. He talked about beginning a policy of muscular liberalism that they determined after the 7/7 bombing had to be fought. After a couple of my media interviews after the Boston bombing, we received a direct communication, a video to us at the American Islamic Forum from a radical Muslim group in London that said he had this 15-minute speech in front of an Islamic flag in London that he was addressing to us, basically telling me and Muslims like me that we were, that America had the Boston bombing coming to it, and et cetera, and that it was the result of foreign policy, and that we are basically apostates by participating in a war against Muslims. So until America can wake up Muslims to the responsibility, I mean, Cameron has been far ahead of us now because they've been stung more times, and I think we're sort of on a slower trajectory towards the same place. And Cameron said, you know what, we've been working with the wrong Muslim groups. We need to start working with groups that are not only pro-British, but are willing to take on and reform these ideas, because this is going to unravel us from within as we continue to play defense, while these groups are gaining strongholds in Egypt and Tunisia, and also within their own country in the UK.
We're talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. You can follow Dr. Jasser on Twitter at Dr. ZUHDI. That's Z for you North Americans. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. And the website for the American Islamic Forum for Democracy is AIFdemocracy.org. Well, we have a convivial relationship with Dr. Jasser, and there are days when we're able to talk more freely and espouse on issues that are macro. This is micro. We're saddened. We're devastated. We're frightened about this. And I want to take this moment to thank Dr. Jasser, to think that that you're thought of as an apostate by such evil men is a red badge of courage in his own way, but no doubt a sword of Damocles in another way. So God bless you, Dr. Jasser. Allah bless you, whatever you need blessed for your thing. But when I say God bless you, you can translate it through your decoder ring to you. I admire your courage and your moxie, and good for you for standing up.
Thank you. And, the guy that was the poor man that was attacked was a soldier, and that wasn't a coincidence. The front lines of this battle, as we saw with Yadal Hassan, we saw with the Arkansas attack on the National Guard, we saw with the Fort Dix 6, over and over, the front line is our military. And when our American Muslims, Western Muslims, start telling our communities, why are there more Wiccans in the U.S. military than there are Muslims? It's because we're telling our kids that somehow the Western militaries are evil, and we need to start having a pro-American, pro-patriotic, pro-liberty approach to counter these ideas.
Instead, we're still talking about Gitmo. I remember the first day this guy said he was going to shut down Gitmo. I said, man, that's never going to happen. Now he's still talking about Gitmo. It seems every time where it gets to an unwieldy place for this man, where even he has to go up there and talk about how, we shouldn't misinterpret this to be anything other than it is. Can I tell you, Dr. Jasser, when I talk about these people as radical Islamic fundamentalists, I just assume that the well over 1 billion Muslims out there know that I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the moron Muslims who are doing this sort of crap. And I can't stop it down every day and apologize to everybody. I'm talking about the monsters who do this. But where are you going to put those people in Gitmo, for God's sakes? What's your thoughts on Guantanamo Bay, Dr. Jasser?
Well, we're in a state of war, and Gitmo has become a political lightning rod, and no one seems to have any thoughts as to, well, why did a president who campaigned on this back in 2007 and 2008 still have Gitmo filled and really know where to send them? Because when we're at a state of war, it's a very complicated matter on what to do with these individuals, that a third of which I believe have been ended up released and found on the battlefield in Afghanistan and elsewhere. So, this is certainly, we need to make sure that their rights are upheld, and, that there aren't any infringement upon the Geneva Conventions. But at the end of the day, even a president who, it's interesting, when I debate Islamists, the first 10 things out of their mouth is all about drones and Gitmo. So, it's absurd that to think that if you, the moral equivalency between what is done in the name of Islamism with the millions that are imprisoned in Iran and Egypt and Afghanistan compared to drones, which are simple operations to counter people like Awlaki, who was advocating the open murder of our citizens
Yes.
and we know has been connected to a number of acts of terror is just absurd.
I know. It's like, they're in the Holocaust business. We're in the, laser surgery business. Occasionally you have to take some moron out. Now, listen, the Turkey prime minister comes over, visits the White House last week to give some in the neighborhood knowledge to the press about the genocide, ever-growing genocides taking place in Syria. I don't think half the people in this country are serious. Well, ironically, even vaguely serious about Syria. But tell me why we should have our eye on that ball, Dr. Jasser.
It's turning into a regional conflict, and right now, without the West and basically what I would call the adults of the world of freedom involved, you're developing a crossroads in the area where you have a civil war that's taken over 80,000 and displaced 5 million, with refugees all across. That's going to pull in an Iranian Hezbollah Syria crescent against a Turkish, Saudi, and Jordanian and Arab Sunni type conflict, with Israel caught in the middle that we're going to end up needing to protect. And if we don't get involved early, yes, there's going to be some difficulty in figuring out who the good guys are, but I can tell you the uprising is 5 to 10 million Syrians that are fighting against their government. There may be 5 to 10,000 al-Qaeda that are a big problem. Most of the Free Syria Army have said we're going to defeat Assad first, and then we're going to defeat al-Qaeda that he brought in. But still, if we don't get involved, for us to sort of pat the Turks on the back and say thank you, and then later wonder why are the Islamists taking over Syria? Well, it's because Turkey is in bed with the Islamists. The Saudis are the Islamists, if not worse, with the Wahhabis. So, listen, we need to advance freedom, and nobody in that party right now is doing that. And there's a genocide happening as we sit back and eat our popcorn.
We're talking to Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. You can follow him on Twitter at Zuhdi Jasser. And the website for the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, his organization, is aifdemocracy.org. Always appreciate your commitment, your cojones, and your time, Dr. Jasser.
It's the least I can do, and thanks for listening, Dennis. I really appreciate it.
We'll have you on down the road. That is a courageous man.